Hi friends, Carissa here. I wanted to do this video because I've noticed online that a lot of women say there's not much information about miscarriages, and I don't know that I found that to be true, but since I still see those types of comments on forums, I thought I would share my experience just to get something out there in the world. And I also feel like I have kind of a unique perspective on it from the nursing side. So I'll also give some tips on what you could do as a nurse that would have made my experience a little bit easier. So, first, I'll just kind of walk through the experience. What happened in my situation is I didn't go in for my 8 week appointment because my doctor ended up getting COVID. So, she had to be out for a few extra weeks. So, I ended up going in at it would have been 11-week appointment. And while she was doing the ultrasound, she kind of goes, I'm not seeing a heartbeat, but I'm going to make sure, I'm going to make 100% sure. So she kind of like does some extra checks and ends up telling us that no, there's no heartbeat and the baby is measuring at 8 weeks. So, and this is probably ignorant on my part, but I'm not sure if that means that it stopped developing at 8 weeks, or I don't know. Anyway, so she tells me, we're well past the stage where she would expect to see a heartbeat. And as a nurse, and logically, it made sense. And I kind of went, okay, yeah, I get it. But it's just impossible to have that logic override your emotions. So I just started crying, and she was fantastic. Apologized. I think as she was talking to me, she even started tearing up. The nurse afterwards, well, the medical assistant afterwards told me that's the least favorite part of their job. I'm sure it is, but a reality of being in obstetrics. So that day was very difficult. I cried a lot. My husband cried with me. We just kind of snuggled and just got through it. So then it took about a week or a week and a half after that. Actually, you know what? I think it was more like 2 weeks. I think it took two-ish weeks after that for the actual miscarriage to happen. So that had occurred in February. I've seen online pregnancy loss is what a lot of people prefer. Makes it seem a little bit more legitimate. I don't know. So what you hear from medical professionals and you can read online is that your miscarriage experience might be different, vastly different from the next person, just like any pregnancy. So some women report spotting, and they just kind of spot until there's no tissue left. Some women, it comes out all in a matter of hours, which was my experience. And then there are times where some of the fetal tissue doesn't fully come out of your uterus, and that's when they require the D&C, which I believe stands for dilation, and I don't know how to say the circuitage. Sorry for my ignorance. I'm sure someone can pronounce it better than I can. It sounds like a French word, but anyway. And that's when they have to go in there physically with instruments to remove any of the leftover fetal tissue. So the day of my miscarriage, I actually got lucky because I was supposed to be on a shift that night, and I got put on call. Thank God. So it happened kind of in the evening, and just started to see a little bit of bleeding, and I was like, okay, this is the miscarriage. And then it just ramped up from there. So eventually, I think after about the first hour, I was going to the bathroom every 15 to 20 minutes. And Every time I went in, I'd have these huge clots coming out. I couldn't see exactly how big they were because the toilet was just like pure red. So, but I could feel how big, I could feel that they were quite large coming out. And I could feel them, like several of them coming out each time, which is not a comfortable feeling. Any of you ladies that have passed a lot of large clots, whether it be on your period or childbirth or whatever, it's a very disconcerting feeling. It's not painful, but it's just, it feels wrong. It feels wrong that there's like this giant squishy thing coming out of your vagina. So you've kind of got that discontentment with things. And then as the night went on, I started kind of squirting blood out. It just got so bad, like I want to describe it as it felt like urination, but obviously it wouldn't be quite the same, but that's how much blood was coming out. It would just kind of shoot out. If I was a smarter person, I probably would have gone to the hospital as soon as those giant clots started passing, because I believe that's one of the times when you are supposed to go to the hospital. But I was being a little stubborn because I did not want to go to the ER. My hospital I worked at was very small, and while not everybody knew me, I knew that none of the ER nurses would know me. But still, I worked in med surg, so my thought process was, oh my god, I'm gonna have to go to the ER, and then if I get admitted to med surg, my coworkers are gonna be taking care of me, which is fine. I actually think very highly of my coworkers. Thought very highly of my coworkers, but it's such a vulnerable thing being there. Like, I didn't even want anybody to know I was going through it. So for me, going to the ER was the last resort. And it ended up being the last resort. So it was about 4 a.m. I went to the toilet again and just had the most blood clots of the whole night just come out. And it was so bad that I started to feel like I was going to pass out. So I kind of clean up a little bit, and I managed to I start crying because I knew at that point that I should go to the ER, and I really, really did not want to. So I start crying. My husband comes in. I'm laying on the floor trying not to pass out. I've got kind of that, like, you see spots, and my breathing is shallow, and he told me that my lips were blue. I felt good enough that I didn't need to call the ambulance, but at that point I was worried if I lost any more blood, I would have to. So we packed up the kid at 4 a.m. and drove to the ER. I could barely walk into the ED and without passing out. And they admitted us to the ED. My experience there was it was okay. You always have to wait for so long. So we just sat in the room and waited. They got some fluids on me right away. And the fluids really helped. I think if I would have gone in sooner, it would have been better. I probably could have gotten a few bags of fluid. I honestly wished that I could have just left the IV in and spiked another bag myself and taken it home. That would have been great, but obviously that wasn't going to happen. So I got one bag of fluids. So in between the waiting, they did a pelvic exam. They did an vaginal ultrasound just to make sure there wasn't, excuse me, any fetal tissue left over. Everything looked good. And then I guess per standard practice, they gave me Cytotec, and I was not pleased with that experience. So ER nurses, take note, they shoved 10 pills up my anus. I'm not joking. They gave it to me rectally. 10 pills. Not a suppository. These were legit little pills like this. 10 of them. More than, actually, you know what? I think it was like 12 or 15, or it was some crazy number. And you would think I'd be able to better advocate for myself being a nurse, but no. I just kind of went with that. I was like, okay, maybe the ER nurse, she's been there a long time. Maybe she knows better than I do. It was awful. She said, well, it doesn't really show to use lube, so she didn't use any. Needless to say, it did not feel good. By the end of it, I was like ready to puke. And I told her that I couldn't take it. Like, she needed to use lube because I couldn't take it. So she did end up using a little bit, but my God, that was an awful experience. And then I couldn't keep them in. Like, I had to use the bathroom when I got home. So I don't even know if they ended up being effective. After that, I ended up doing a lot of research on the internet, and there aren't very many studies on the rectal use of Cytotec, but I need to make sure I'm saying the right. I'm at my computer. Cytotec, yeah, misoprostol. There isn't that much evidence on rectal use, so I really don't understand why they chose that route. Everything I read online, every study I read, said that the effectiveness was basically the same as using it vaginally or orally. And that maybe vaginally was a little bit better than orally. So I really, to this day, do not understand why they felt like they had to administer it rectally. It was awful. It hurt. I had just had a miscarriage, and then they wanted to shove a bunch of pills up my ass. Like, no thank you. Never again will I allow that to happen. So ER nurses, please take note. And please, if you have the evidence showing that it's more effective, let me know, because I couldn't find it. So I was really not happy about that experience. I ended up telling someone at the hospital about it, and I was kind of disappointed that they didn't really seem to think it was a big deal, which I don't get, because I feel like it's actually dangerous administering it, especially without lube. You can tear the rectal tissue beyond it being uncomfortable. Those pills are really sharp, and you could tear the rectal tissue and open a person up to infection. So I'm really not sure why that's standard practice, and I'm not sure why it wasn't taken as a big deal. Maybe I'm making a bigger deal of it than I should be. I don't know, but to me, I feel like it's completely inappropriate, and no, not pleased about that. So yeah, that part of the experience I would prefer to have not gone through. Other than that, all the nurses and everyone, they were fine. Everyone was very nice, and no one was like overly sympathetic. I think it's kind of hard when you feel like people feel sorry for you, and I didn't feel like anybody was pitying me or anything like that. So otherwise, the experience was fine being in the ER. It just always takes a long time. And I knew that from being a consumer and a nurse. So that was basically it. Then I, went home and rested. My OB was amazing, and she called me later and said that she wanted, because I didn't end up seeing her in the ED. She called me later and said, hey, I want you to rest and eat your favorite food and take a bath and all that stuff. And if you need a note to get out of work, let me know. So I really appreciated that, and I thought she was just fabulous through the whole process. So then follow-up is they will draw your blood every week to make sure that the human growth hormone levels are coming down, and a result of less than 5 is considered negative. So they will test you. I guess some places will test you until you hit below 5, and some will do until you hit 0. I stopped going in once mine hit 5, even though they wanted me to come in, because the week after that, I ended up having my regular period. So, yeah, that's my experience. Emotionally, this affected me infinitely more than I expected. Not that I didn't expect to be sad. I totally did. But I thought it would be one of those things that I could be like, okay, yeah, I'm really sad, cry for a few days, and then move on. Um, for whatever reason, this hit me really hard. This baby was something we were really excited about. My husband and I had waffled back and forth for, well, 5 years. My daughter's 5. And we weren't sure if we wanted another one, if we could handle having another one. And then as soon as I got pregnant, we were both just so excited. And we couldn't wait to have a second kid. And our daughter was excited. She really wants a sibling. So it just felt like really good timing. And then it would have been a September due date, and there's nobody else in the family that's a September baby. So we were like, oh, it's divine timing. So it was just disappointing because it felt like it was meant to be. It felt like it was the right time, but I guess it wasn't. So it just was emotionally very difficult. Dealing with that at work was hard. It took me a long time to tell my coworkers. I had actually told everybody. I didn't want to, but I had told everybody when I found out I was pregnant, because with COVID going on, just to be safe, we were having pregnant women avoid the COVID rooms when possible. So I did end up telling all my coworkers and everyone really early. And then for a long time, I just could not stomach the thought of talking about it. So probably the last week or so of my time at the hospital, I did end up telling people. And now that we're a few months out, I feel like I'm kind of coming to terms with everything and feel a lot better about it. But I definitely reverted to some of my old habits. I started binge eating again and just didn't care. Yeah, I don't know. It just hit me really much harder than I thought it would. So, the best thing that, people say to you, I think, is anything you feel is valid, and whatever your experience is, that's your experience. And, you can feel those feelings, and you can feel sad, or, even if there is a little bit of relief or whatever, that's okay too. It's your experience, and you get to feel whatever comes to you. So that's my experience with pregnancy loss. One last thing. One of the things I felt was really I don't know if anger. I felt like it was really unjust, because I've been through a lot of mental health issues, and I've struggled with my physical health in different ways. And this was one of those things where I honestly didn't really anticipate it, because I would kind of think okay, God, I've been through so much crap, just no, don't give me a miscarriage. Probably could have died in childbirth. Just, let me not have to experience a miscarriage. And here we are, having to go through another difficult thing again. So initially I was very mad about that, because I feel like I've kind of done my time with traumatic crap. But I'm sure in the future it will be revealed to me that, it was that way for a reason. And if you don't feel like it happened for a reason, you don't have to. I'm not into that. I'm not into that toxic positivity bullshit, because I've been sucked down that road and I know how harmful it can be. So I think it's great to find positive things in the world and to find ways to cope and move on, but in your own time. Never should you feel forced to just be like, oh yeah, it happened for a reason, and yeah, you can get pregnant again, blah blah. Just when people say stupid crap like that, ignore them. I think when it comes to difficult situations, a lot of people just don't know how to react or what to say, and instead of keeping their mouths shut, they say stupid stuff. So just ignore them. If somebody says anything to you oh, well, you can have another one, okay, no shit, Sherlock, or well, no, I can't. Just you got to just take it as it comes and realize that people say things like that because they're uncomfortable, not because they're trying to make you feel bad. And I apologize on their behalf for you if that happens to you. So I hope that this was helpful. And I know that things were a little bit graphic. So yeah, hopefully that didn't freak anyone out. Maybe there's some men watching this. And yeah, if you hadn't heard it yet, you'll eventually hear it if you have a pregnant wife. So thank you for joining me, and please let me know if you have any questions or want me to address anything else, and I'll see you for our next video.